The morning sun filtered through the greasy windows of Mel's all-night diner, casting long shadows across cracked vinyl booths and checkered linoleum that had seen better decades. The coffee was strong enough to wake the dead, the bacon grease thick enough to coat your lungs, and the conversations quiet enough that everyone minded their own business. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from. And if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed because tomorrow, I've saved something extra special for you. It was the kind of place where truckers, night shift workers, and the occasional lost soul found refuge without judgment. Where stories were swallowed with black coffee and secrets stayed buried under layers of cigarette smoke that no amount of cleaning could ever quite erase. Chen had been managing this place for 8 years. 8 years of broken coffee makers, graveyard shifts, and a rotating cast of employees who drifted in and out like ghosts. He'd learned to read people the way others read newspapers, quickly, efficiently, and with enough distance to protect himself from getting too involved. But this morning, something was different. Something that made his stomach clench and his hands pause mid-pour as he watched Elena Santos move behind the grill. Elena had been working the breakfast shift for 3 months. Reliable, quiet, the kind of cook who never called in sick, never started drama, and could flip eggs with the precision of a surgeon. She kept her dark hair pulled back in a tight ponytail, wore oversized chef's coats that swallowed her small frame, and had eyes that seemed to hold more weight than any 26-year-old should carry. This morning, those eyes were rimmed with purple. Marcus set down the coffee pot and really looked at her. The bruise around her left eye was fresh maybe 12 hours old and had been poorly covered with makeup that couldn't quite hide the swelling. She moved differently too, favoring her right side like her ribs ached with every breath. When she reached up to grab plates from the high shelf, her sleeve rode up just enough to reveal finger-shaped bruises wrapped around her wrist like a bracelet of violence. "Elena," Marcus called softly, not wanting to startle her. "You okay, sweetheart?" She froze, her back still turned, one hand gripping the plate so tight her knuckles went white. For a moment, the only sounds were the sizzle of bacon on the griddle and the distant hum of morning traffic picking up outside. "I'm fine," she said finally, her voice steady but hollow. "Just fell down some stairs last night. Clumsy, you know?" Marcus had heard that excuse before. Too many times. In 8 years of managing this place, he'd seen enough broken people stumble through his doors to recognize the signs. The careful way she held herself. The practiced lie delivered with just enough conviction to sound believable. The shame that radiated from her like heat from the grill. The bell above the door chimed, and Marcus looked up to see a familiar figure filling the doorway. 6'4", leather vest over a white t-shirt, arms covered in tattoos that told stories most people wouldn't want to hear. Steel gray beard, weathered face, and eyes that missed nothing. Jake "Thunder" Morrison, president of the Iron Wolves Motorcycle Club. He'd been coming to Mel's every Tuesday morning for the past year, always ordering the same thing: black coffee, eggs over easy, wheat toast, extra bacon. He was polite, tipped well, and never caused trouble. But there was something about him, a quiet intensity that suggested crossing him would be the last mistake you'd ever make. "Morning, Marcus," Thunder rumbled, sliding onto his usual stool at the counter. His voice was like gravel in a cement mixer, worn smooth by years of road dust and cigarette smoke. "Morning, Thunder." "The usual?" "You know it." Elena had turned back to the grill, but Marcus caught the way her shoulders tensed when Thunder spoke. It wasn't fear exactly, more like recognition. The way prey recognizes a predator, even when that predator isn't hunting. Thunder's sharp eyes tracked movement behind the counter, taking in details the way a soldier scans for threats. When Elena turned to deliver his plate, their eyes met for just a second. That's when everything changed. Thunder's coffee cup stopped halfway to his lips. His expression shifted from casual morning routine to something harder, more focused. He set the cup down with the careful precision of a man trying not to break something. "Ma'am," he said, his voice gentler than Marcus had ever heard it. "That's a nasty fall you took." Elena's hand trembled as she refilled his coffee. It looks worse than it is. Does it now? Thunder studied her face with the intensity of someone reading a map in enemy territory. Stairs can be real dangerous, especially the kind that grab you by the wrist and leave fingerprints. The coffee pot slipped from Elena's hands, shattering against the floor in an explosion of glass and hot liquid. She dropped to her knees immediately, frantically gathering the pieces like her life depended on it. "I'm sorry. I'm so sorry," she whispered, her voice cracking. "I'll clean it up. I'll pay for it. Please don't tell Euro." "Elena." Thunder's voice cut through her panic like a blade. "Look at me." She raised her head slowly, and Marcus saw tears tracking through her makeup, revealing more bruises underneath. "Nobody's angry," Thunder said, his tone steady and calm. "Accidents happen. That's what insurance is for." He glanced at Marcus. "Right, boss?" Marcus nodded, grabbing a broom. "Don't worry about it, Elena. Just sit down for a minute." But Elena was already shaking her head, scrambling to her feet. "I have to get back to work." "The breakfast Russia Euro can wait 5 minutes," Thunder interrupted. He stood slowly, his considerable frame unfolding like a mountain rising from the earth. "Why don't you tell me about those stairs?" Elena backed against the grill, trapped between the hot metal and Thunder's steady gaze. "I told you, I fell a Euro. My sister used to fall down a lot of stairs," Thunder said conversationally, taking a step closer. Amazing how those stairs would grab her throat, leave handprints on her arms. Real aggressive stairs, those were. The silence stretched between them like a taut wire. Elena's breathing became shallow, rapid. Marcus recognized the signs of someone about to either run or collapse. "What happened to your sister?" Elena whispered. Thunder's jaw tightened. "She died falling downstairs." Except it wasn't stairs. It was her husband. And I wasn't there to stop it because I was deployed overseas playing soldier while she was getting murdered in her own kitchen. The raw pain in his voice hit the diner like a physical force. Marcus felt his own chest tighten, understanding flooding through him. This wasn't just about Elena. This was about redemption. "I won't let that happen again," Thunder continued, his voice soft but carrying the weight of an oath. "Not on my watch, not in my town." Elena's composure finally cracked. Tears spilled over, and her whole body began to shake. "You don't understand. He'll kill me if I tell anyone. He said he would, and I believe him." "Who will?" She glanced around the diner, like the walls might have ears. Two truckers sat in a corner booth, lost in their own conversation. An elderly woman nursed coffee at the counter, reading a paperback novel. Normal people living normal lives, unaware that a woman's life was hanging in the balance 10 feet away. "My boyfriend," Elena breathed. "Derek Hawkins. He owns the auto shop on 5th Street. Half the cops in town get their cars fixed there. He knows people. Important people." Thunder's expression darkened. "Derek Hawkins. Tall guy, brown hair, drives a lifted red Ford?" Elena's eyes widened. "You know him?" "Know of him. Heard stories." Thunder's hands clenched into fists. "None of them good. Word around town is he's got a temper and connections that keep him out of trouble." "Then you know I can't a Euro." "Can't what?" "Can't live without fear? Can't sleep without wondering if tonight's the night he goes too far?" Thunder leaned forward, his voice intense but not intimidating. "Elena, look at me. Really look at me." She did, and whatever she saw in his eyes made her straighten slightly. "I'm going to ask you one question, and I want you to think real hard before you answer. Are you ready to let someone help you?" The question hung in the air like smoke. Marcus found himself holding his breath, watching Elena's face cycle through emotions a Euro, fear, hope, desperation, and something that might have been the first spark of courage she'd felt in months. "What if he finds out you talk to me?" she asked. "Then he'll have bigger problems than you to worry about." The bell above the door chimed again, and all three of them turned to see a man entering. He was exactly as Thunder had described a Euro: tall, lean, brown hair, wearing work clothes that couldn't hide the swagger in his step. Derek Hawkins moved through the diner like he owned it, his eyes scanning until they found Elena. The transformation in her was instant and heartbreaking. She shrank into herself, the brief spark of hope extinguishing as if someone had thrown water on a flame. Her hand instinctively went to her throat, and Marcus saw fresh bruises there too, hidden beneath her collar. "There's my girl," Derek said, his voice carrying a possessive edge that made Thunder's jaw twitch. "Ready to go home, babe? I've got some things I need to discuss with you." Elena's face went pale. I still have 3 hours left on my shift. I talked to your boss. He said you could leave early." Derek's smile was sharp, predatory. "Didn't you, Marcus?" Marcus felt every eye in the diner on him. The truckers had stopped talking. The elderly woman had lowered her book. Even the cook in the back had gone quiet, sensing the tension. "Actually," Marcus said, surprised by the steadiness of his own voice, "Elena's scheduled until 2. We need her for the lunch rush." Derek's expression shifted, the mask of friendliness slipping just enough to reveal something uglier underneath. "I don't think you heard me right. I said she's leaving. Now." Thunder slowly turned on his stool, making himself visible for the first time since Derek had entered. The two men locked eyes, and the temperature in the room seemed to drop 10 degrees. "Problem here?" Thunder asked mildly. Derek sized him up. €1, the leather vest, the tattoos. The way Thunder carried himself like violence was just another tool in his toolbox. For a moment, calculation flickered across Derek's features. "No problem," Derek said finally. "Just picking up my girlfriend." "Funny thing about that word," Thunder replied, his tone conversational. "Girlfriend implies a certain level of respect, doesn't it? Caring, protection." His eyes flicked to Elena's bruised face. "Seems like somebody's been failing in that department." Derek's hands clenched into fists. "You don't know what you're talking about, old man." "Old man," Thunder chuckled, but there was no humor in it. "That's funny. You know what's not funny? Putting your hands on women who can't fight back." The silence that followed was deafening. Derek took a step forward, trying to use his height to intimidate, but Thunder remained seated, utterly relaxed, like a coiled spring waiting to be released. "Elena," Derek snapped, not taking his eyes off Thunder. "Get your stuff. We're leaving." "Actually," Elena said, her voice barely above a whisper, but somehow carrying clearly through the diner. "I think I'll finish my shift." Derek's head whipped around to stare at her. "What did you just say?" "I said I'll finish my shift." Elena's voice grew stronger with each word. "I need the money. You need €1. Derek's face flushed red. "We'll discuss this at home." "No," Elena said, and that single word carried more power than any speech. "We won't." For a moment, Derek looked genuinely shocked. Then the anger took over, transforming his features into something ugly and dangerous. "You little €1." He lunged forward, hand raised to strike. He never made it. Thunder moved with a speed that defied his size, rising from his stool and catching Derek's wrist in a grip that stopped the blow mid-swing. The sound of Derek's gasp of pain cut through the diner like a knife. "I wouldn't," Thunder said quietly. "Not here. Not in front of witnesses. Not ever again." Derek tried to pull away, but Thunder's grip was iron. "Let go of me, you psycho." "Sure thing." Thunder released him, and Derek stumbled backward, cradling his wrist. "But let me make something real clear. Elena just told you no. That's a complete sentence. It doesn't need explanation or justification. And if I ever hear about you not respecting that word, we're going to have a very different kind of conversation." Derek looked around the diner, seeing the faces watching him. The truckers had stood up, sensing trouble. The elderly woman had her phone out, finger hovering over what was probably 911. Even Marcus had positioned himself between Derek and Elena. "This isn't over," Derek snarled. "Yes," Thunder said, his voice carrying absolute finality. "It is." Derek stormed out, slamming the door so hard the bell above it rattled for a full 10 seconds. In the aftermath, Elena sank onto a stool behind the counter, her whole body shaking with the magnitude of what had just happened. "He's going to be so angry," she whispered. "Let him be angry," Thunder said, settling back onto his own stool. Angry from a distance is a lot safer than friendly up close. Marcus poured fresh coffee for everyone, his hands steadier than he felt. Elena, you don't have to go back there. We can find you somewhere safe to stay. Where? She asked, and the hopelessness in her voice broke something in Thunder's chest. He knows everyone in this town. The sheriff goes fishing with him. The mayor's wife gets her car detailed at his shop. I've got no family, no money saved up because he controls all my paychecks. Where am I supposed to go? Thunder pulled out his phone and scrolled through his contacts. I know some people. 30 minutes later, the rumble of motorcycle engines began to echo through the streets of Cedar Creek. It started as a distant thunder, barely audible over the normal sounds of midday traffic. But it grew, building like an approaching storm until the very windows of Mel's diner began to vibrate. Elena looked up from where she'd been mechanically wiping down the same spot on the counter for the 5th time. What's that sound? Thunder smiled for the first time since Derek had left. That's the sound of brothers coming home. The first bike appeared at the end of the street a euro, a massive Harley with a rider in full leathers. Then another, and another. They rolled in formation. Engines synchronized in a rhythm that spoke of years riding together, bleeding together, standing together. Iron Wolves Motorcycle Club, 43 strong and growing. They parked in a line down both sides of the street, chrome and steel gleaming in the afternoon sun. Men and women dismounted with the casual confidence of people who'd seen the world at its worst and decided to make it better through sheer force of will. Marcus watched through the window, awestruck. Thunder, what did you do? Made some phone calls. Explained the situation. Thunder stood and walked to the door, holding it open as his family began to file in. They came in quietly, respectfully. These weren't the stereotypical bikers from movies a euro. These were teachers and veterans, mechanics and nurses, retirees and small business owners, united by the road, by loyalty, by a code that said the strong protect the weak. Bull Morrison, Thunder's younger brother and the club's sergeant-at-arms, approached first. 6'6" and built like his nickname suggested, with gentle eyes that contradicted his intimidating exterior. Elena, Thunder said, I'd like you to meet my family. One by one, they introduced themselves. Sarah Phoenix Martinez, an ER nurse who'd seen too many women like Elena roll through her trauma bay. Tommy Wrench Kowalski, a mechanic who'd grown up watching his father beat his mother. Maria Angel Rodriguez, a social worker who'd dedicated her life to helping domestic abuse survivors. Each of them had a story. Each of them had chosen to be part of something bigger than themselves. We heard you might need some friends, Phoenix said, her voice warm but strong. Turns out, you've got more than you know. Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time. So if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel. It means a lot to us. Now back to the story. Elena looked around the diner, now filled with 43 people who dropped whatever they were doing to stand up for a woman they'd never met. Tears started flowing again, but these were different tears. These carried hope. I don't understand, she whispered. Why would you do this for me? Thunder sat back down beside her. Because that's what family does. And like it or not, you're family now. But Derek a Euro will think twice before he messes with someone under Iron Wolves protection. Bull rumbled. We've got lawyers, cops, judges, business owners. Good people who believe in doing what's right. Plus, added a woman with silver hair and kind eyes who'd introduced herself as Grandma Betty. We've got connections Derek Hawkins doesn't even know exist. People who owe us favors. People who remember what real justice looks like. Angel stepped forward, pulling out a business card. I run a safe house network across 3 counties. We can have you somewhere secure tonight, with legal protection and resources to help you start over. What about my job? Elena asked. Marcus cleared his throat. Actually, I've been thinking about opening a second location across town. Could use an experienced cook to help manage it. Might even come with a small apartment upstairs. If you're interested. Elena stared at him. You'd do that? Elena, Thunder said gently, you've been carrying this alone for too long. Let us help carry it for a while. The door chimed again, and everyone turned to see Derek storming back in, his face red with rage. He'd clearly been drinking a euro. Marcus could smell it from across the room. "What the hell is this?" Derek shouted, taking in the sea of leather vests and determined faces. "Some kind of biker gang intimidation?" Thunder stood slowly, and 42 other iron wolves rose with him like a wave of black, leather, and righteous anger. "This," Thunder said quietly, "is a conversation." Derek's bravado faltered as he realized he was severely outnumbered, but alcohol and entitlement made him stupid. "Elena belongs to me," he snarled, "and no bunch of motorcycle thugs is going to change that." The temperature in the room dropped to absolute zero. Elena flinched at the word belongs, and that small reaction was like throwing gasoline on a fire. Bull took a step forward, his massive frame casting a shadow over Derek. "Did you just say she belongs to you?" "That's right. She's my euro. She's a human being," Phoenix interrupted, her nurse's training warring with her protective instincts. "Not property. Not a possession. A person with rights and choices." Derek tried to push past Bull to get to Elena, but it was like trying to move a mountain. "Elena, get over here. Now." "No." The word came from Elena herself, stronger this time. She stood up, behind the counter, facing Derek with 43 bikers at her back. "I said no, Derek. I quit. We're done. I'm not going anywhere with you." Derek's face twisted with rage. "You think these freaks are going to protect you forever? I know where you work. I know where you live. I know a euro." "Not anymore, you don't," Angel interjected. "Because as of right now, Elena's under protective services supervision. Any contact with her constitutes harassment and violates the restraining order I'm going to help her file this afternoon." "Restraining order?" Derek laughed harshly. "Good luck with that. I've got Frince a euro." "So do we," said a new voice from the back of the crowd. Everyone turned to see a man in his 50s, wearing a business suit instead of leather. He had the bearing of someone accustomed to being obeyed and the eyes of someone who'd seen everything the legal system had to offer. "Judge William Harrison," Thunder explained. "Retired, but still carries weight. Also happens to be an Iron Wolf supporter." Judge Harrison stepped forward, his expression stern. "Mr. Hawkins, I presume? I've been hearing some interesting things about you lately. Seems there have been several complaints filed with various agencies. Police reports that mysteriously disappeared. Women who suddenly decided not to press charges." Derek's face went pale. "I don't know what you're talking about." "Of course you don't. But I think the state attorney general might be very interested in investigating systematic corruption in your little network of friends. Amazing how quickly rats scatter when you shine a light on them." The fight went out of Derek like air from a punctured tire. He looked around the room, seeing his future written in 43 pairs of uncompromising eyes. "This isn't over," he muttered, but the words carried no conviction. "Yes," Thunder said, his voice carrying the finality of a judge's gavel. "It is." Derek stumbled toward the door, pausing, only to shoot one last venomous look at Elena. "You'll regret this." Bull stepped forward, and Derek flinched backward through the doorway. "Only person who's going to regret anything," Bull said conversationally, "is anyone stupid enough to threaten family." Derek left, but his threats hung in the air like smoke. Elena sank back onto her stool, the adrenaline finally wearing off and leaving her shaking. "He meant it," she whispered. "He'll come after me. After all of you." Thunder sat down beside her, his presence solid and reassuring. "Elena, let me tell you something about bullies. They're only dangerous when their victims are isolated and afraid. You're not isolated anymore, and you don't have to be afraid." Phoenix knelt down beside Elena's stool. "Honey, I've seen this before. The threats, the intimidation, the promises that it'll get worse if you fight back. You know what I've learned in 15 years of emergency medicine?" Elena shook her head. "The only thing worse than fighting back is not fighting back. Because people like Derek don't stop. They escalate. They push boundaries until there are no boundaries left." Angel pulled out a tablet and began making notes. "We need to document everything. Every threat, Every incident, every bruise. Build a case that even Derek's corrupt friends can't make disappear. I have photos, Elena said quietly. On my phone. I started taking them after the first time, thinking maybe someday. She trailed off. Someday just arrived, Judge Harrison said firmly. With proper documentation and testimony, we can build a case that bypasses the local corruption entirely. Take it straight to federal authorities if necessary. Thunder's phone buzzed. He glanced at it, and his expression darkened. Elena, does Derek know your work schedule? Yes, why? Thunder showed her the phone. A text message from an unknown number. Tell the bitch she can't hide forever. I'll be waiting. The room went silent except for the sound of 43 people breathing carefully controlled anger. That's it, Bull growled. I'm done with this amateur hour intimidation bullshit. Bull, Thunder warned. No, Jake, you know I'm right. This punk thinks he can threaten family and walk away. Elena looked around the room, seeing the fury in their faces, and something inside her broke open. Not in a bad way, a euro, more like a dam breaking to let the flood waters flow free. I've been scared for so long, she said, her voice growing stronger with each word. Scared to speak up, scared to fight back, scared to even hope things could be different. But looking at all of you, seeing people willing to stand up for someone they barely know. She stood up, facing the room full of bikers, and, for the first time in months, her spine was straight and her head was high. Derek Hawkins stole 2 years of my life. He stole my confidence, my peace of mind, my ability to trust myself. But he doesn't get to steal my future. The applause started with Grandma Betty and spread through the room like wildfire. These hardened bikers, people who'd faced down everything from enemy fire to corrupt cops, were applauding a 26-year-old cook who'd finally found her courage. Thunder's phone buzzed again. Another text. Parking lot behind the diner. 5 minutes. Come alone, or she pays. Thunder showed the message to Bull, who cracked his knuckles audibly. Guess Derek wants to have that conversation after all, Bull said. He said come alone, Elena pointed out, fear creeping back into her voice. Thunder looked around the room at his family, a euro, his chosen family. Bound not by blood, but by something stronger. Brotherhood, loyalty, love. Nobody rides alone, he said simply. Number, resolution with emotional triumph. The Iron Wolves filed out of the diner in perfect formation. Not rushing, not aggressive, just 43 people walking with purpose toward the parking lot behind Mel's diner. Derek was waiting by his lifted red Ford, and he wasn't alone. 3 other men stood with him, a euro. Marcus recognized 2 of them as Derek's employees from the auto shop. The third was wearing a security uniform from the mall. The odds were 4 to 43. Derek had made a serious miscalculation. Where is she? Derek shouted as the bikers formed a semicircle around his truck. I want to talk to Elena. She's done talking to you, Thunder replied calmly. But I'm happy to continue our conversation. Derek's 3 companions were looking increasingly nervous as more and more Iron Wolves appeared. These weren't the kind of people you intimidated with numbers. You can't keep her from me forever, Derek snarled. I'll find her. I always find her. No, said Elena's voice from behind them. You won't. Everyone turned to see Elena walking toward them, flanked by Phoenix and Angel. She changed out of her chef's coat into jeans and a t-shirt that Phoenix had brought from her bike. Simple clothes, but she wore them like armor. Elena, get away from these freaks, Derek commanded. Come home, and we'll forget this whole thing happened. Elena walked right up to Derek, close enough that he could have grabbed her if he tried. But with 43 bikers watching his every move, he didn't dare. Derek, she said, her voice steady and clear. I want you to listen very carefully, because I'm only going to say this once. She looked him straight in the eyes. This man who controlled her through fear and violence for 2 years. You don't own me. You never owned me. I'm not your property, your possession, or your anything. I'm a free woman making a free choice, and my choice is to never see you again. Derek's face cycled through emotions. A euro, rage, disbelief, desperation. You need me, he said, his voice taking on a wheedling tone. Who's going to take care of you? Who's going to protect you? Elena gestured to the sea of leather vests surrounding them. I think I've got that covered. They won't always be there. And when they're no to Euro, when they're not, interrupted a new voice. We will be. Everyone turned to see 3 police cars pulling into the parking lot. But these weren't Derek's corrupt friends. The lead car was driven by Captain Maria Santos, a Euro, Elena's older sister, wearing a state police uniform. Elena gasped. Maria? Hey, little sister. Maria got out of her patrol car, her hand resting casually on her service weapon. Sorry it took me so long to get here. Had to drive in from the state capitol when Angel called. Derek's face went white. Your cops? State police, Maria corrected. With a warrant for your arrest on charges of domestic violence, harassment, and intimidation. Turns out those photos Elena took, combined with testimony from several witnesses and some interesting financial records we found, paint quite a picture. Judge Harrison stepped forward, holding up an official-looking document. Mr. Hawkins, you're also being served with a restraining order. You're to have no contact with Elena Santos, directly or indirectly. You're not to come within 500 feet of her residence, workplace, or any establishment where she might reasonably be expected to be found. Derek looked around wildly, seeing his world crumbling. This is harassment. Police brutality. I'll sue all of you. With what lawyer? Maria asked mildly, snapping handcuffs on his wrists. Funny thing happened this morning. Your lawyer, the one who's been making your problems disappear, turns out he's got some problems of his own. Federal tax evasion charges. He's going to be too busy to help you for the next 10 to 15 years. As Derek was loaded into the patrol car, he screamed threats and curses that echoed off the brick walls of the buildings. But they were the desperate shrieks of a man whose power had been stripped away, revealed for the pathetic bully he'd always been. Elena watched him go, and with each foot of distance the patrol car put between them, she stood a little straighter. How long will he be in jail? She asked. With the evidence we have? Long enough, Maria replied. And when he gets out, he'll be on probation with strict conditions. If he so much as drives down a street you're on, he goes back inside. Thunder approached Elena, his expression gentle. How you feeling? Elena thought about it seriously. Scared, she admitted, but also free. For the first time in 2 years, I feel free. Phoenix squeezed her shoulder. The scared part will fade. The free part? That's forever. 6 months later, Mel's Diner was busier than it had ever been. The new location across town was thriving under Elena's management, and the original had become an unofficial gathering place for the Iron Wolves and their growing list of allies. Elena stood behind the counter of the original location, no longer wearing chef's coats that swallowed her frame. She gained weight, a Euro, healthy weight that came from eating regularly and sleeping without fear. Her hair was shorter, styled in a way that made her look confident and professional. The bruises were long gone, replaced by laugh lines and the kind of glow that comes from living without fear. Thunder sat at his usual stool, reading a newspaper and working on his 3rd cup of coffee. It was Tuesday morning, and some traditions were worth keeping. Marcus, Elena called to the back office. The restaurant supply truck is here. I'll handle it. Marcus called back. You've got that interview in an hour. Elena checked her watch and smiled. A reporter from the state newspaper wanted to do a story about the Iron Wolves community outreach programs. Specifically, their new initiative to help domestic violence survivors start over. The bell above the door chimed. An angel walked in with a young woman Elena didn't recognize. The woman had that haunted look Elena remembered. From her own mirror, a Euro, the careful way of moving, the hypervigilance, the shame that radiated like heat. Elena, Angel said, I'd like you to meet Jessica. She's looking for a fresh start. Elena came around the counter and extended her hand. Hi, Jessica. I'm Elena. I run this place. Jessica shook her hand tentatively. Angel says you might have a job opening. I might. Let's talk. As Elena led Jessica to a corner booth, Thunder watched with satisfaction. 6 months ago, Elena had been the one seeking help. Now she was offering it to others. The cycle of healing continued. His phone buzzed with a text from Bull. 3 more families want to join the ride this weekend. We're going to need more bikes. Thunder smiled and typed back. Good problem to have. The ride was a monthly event where Iron Wolves escorted domestic violence survivors to court dates, job interviews, or just to places they needed to go but were afraid to face alone. Word had spread, and they were getting requests from across the state. Elena returned to the counter after settling Jessica in with a coffee and a job application. Another one? Thunder asked. Another one. Elena's smile was bright and genuine. She's scared, but she's here. That's the hardest part. You sure you want to take on training someone new right when the second restaurant is taking off? Elena looked through the window at the street where Iron Wolves bikes were parked like metallic guardians, where Angel was making phone calls to line up housing assistance, where Phoenix was arriving for her lunch break before heading back to the hospital. Thunder, she said. 6 months ago, 43 strangers walked into this diner and changed my life. They gave me hope when I had none, courage when I was broken, and a family when I was alone. She paused, her voice getting stronger. If I can pass even a fraction of that along to someone else, then everything Derek put me through wasn't for nothing. It becomes part of something bigger, something better. Thunder nodded, understanding completely. That's what family does. That's what family does, Elena agreed. As the afternoon wore on, the diner filled with its usual mix of truckers, locals, and Iron Wolves. Conversations flowed between tables, barriers broken down by shared meals and mutual respect. Jessica slowly relaxed as Elena introduced her to the regulars, each one offering quiet support and welcome. At closing time, Elena stood in the doorway, watching the last customers leave. The Iron Wolves lingered, as they always did, making sure she got to her car safely. Not because she needed protection anymore, but because that's what family did. Thunder was the last to leave, pausing beside his bike. Elena, he called. You know Derek gets out next month, right? She nodded. She'd been tracking his sentence, prepared for this day. You worried? Elena looked at the thriving restaurant behind her, thought about Jessica. Starting tomorrow. About the dozen other women who'd found new starts through the Iron Wolves network. She thought about Maria, who called every week just to check in. About the community that had rallied around her when she finally found the courage to ask for help. No, she said, and realized she meant it completely. I'm not worried at all. Thunder grinned and kicked his bike to life. The rumble echoed off the buildings, a sound that once might have frightened her, but now meant safety, family, home. As the Iron Wolves rode off into the evening, their tail lights disappearing around the corner, Elena locked up the diner and headed to her car. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, new people who needed help, new opportunities to pay forward the kindness that had saved her life. But tonight, she was going home to an apartment that was truly hers, to sleep in a bed where she felt safe, to dream dreams that weren't haunted by fear. Derek Hawkins had stolen 2 years of her life. The Iron Wolves had given her the rest of it back. And that, Elena thought as she drove through the quiet streets of Cedar Creek, was what real family looked like. Not the family you were born into, but the family that chose you. The family that showed up when you needed them most and stayed long enough to help you remember who you really were. She pulled into her driveway and sat for a moment, looking up at the stars visible beyond the streetlights. Somewhere out there, 43 engines were carrying her brothers and sisters home to their own lives, their own families, their own dreams. But connected by something stronger than blood, something forged in moments of crisis and strengthened by acts of courage. Connected by the simple truth that no one should have to face their demons alone, Elena smiled, gathered her purse, and headed inside. Tomorrow would be a good day. After all, she had family to help make sure of it. Asterisk, if this story touched your heart, if it reminded you that compassion still exists even in the roughest souls, please like, share, and leave a comment. Tell us what moment hit you the most. And remember €1 if you or someone you know needs help. There are people willing to stand up and fight alongside you. Sometimes, courage starts with a single word. Help. Asterisk. Because kindness doesn't always wear a badge or carry credentials. Sometimes it rides on two wheels, wearing leather, carrying hearts strong enough to fight for someone else's tomorrow. Asterisk up next, you've got two more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hit the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out.